All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Head in the Clouds from us at Go Cloud Careers. My name is Chris Johnson, and I am joined by our founder and CEO, Mike Gibbs, and our Chief of Marketing, Alonzo Coleman. We are here to have a little bit of fun, here to talk to you guys about the cloud architect job, and in particular, what the cloud architect does. And if you saw the thumbnail, then you know we're going to be talking about driving business performance. What does that mean? What type of cloud architect business skills are necessary to drive business performance? That's what we're going to be talking about. Like I said, we're going to be talking about what does a cloud architect do. We're going to be talking about the cloud architect job description and how that compares to what the cloud architect actually does. We'll talk about cloud architect job skills, cloud architect business skills. And in particular, tonight we'll be talking about business acumen for IT professionals and business acumen for tech professionals, because that's one of the key critical components of the cloud architect role is business acumen. So I'm excited to be here. I know Alonzo and Mike are excited to be here, but I want to tell everybody of a couple of things before we jump in. So we've got, for a limited time, we've got a 2-for-1 Memorial Day special going on. What this is if you enroll in our award-winning Cloud Architect Career Development Program, you will also get, at no extra cost, our Tech Interview Fundamentals program. That is a game-changing combination that can set you apart. Just today, we had someone share some good news with us that they have been offered a role in their first tech job. And not only is it their first tech job, but they got offered a role that was higher than what they interviewed for, and they were able to negotiate a higher salary than what they started at. So all of that is possible with this dynamic combination of the Cloud Architect Career Development Program and the Tech Interview Fundamentals. Game changing. That's the easiest way to put it. Game changing for you. So take advantage of that, and don't miss out. It's for a limited time only, 2-for-1 special. And if that wasn't enough, you also get 10% off on top of that. So you're paying for one program, getting 10% off, and you're getting another program for free. Yeah. So take advantage of that while it's available. Tyrone's got that over there in the chat box for you. Also, I want to let everybody know about our How to Become the Ultimate Cloud Architect webinar. We do this every Thursday at 1 p.m. We're going to be doing one next Monday night also. For those of you that might not be able to join during the day, we'll be doing one next Monday night. So click that link in the chat box, click that link in the description, and register for either this Thursday or next Monday's How to Become the Ultimate Cloud Architect webinar. We will share everything that you need to know to become the ultimate cloud architect, and in particular, how we can help you get there. So make sure you join that webinar. Make sure you take advantage of that 2-for-1 special while it's available, and set yourself apart and reach your dreams. So Mike and Alonzo, I know you guys are excited for a fun show. I will hand it over to you guys to say some welcoming words. And also, everybody, let us know where you're from in the chat box. Yeah. We always like to know where everybody's from. I'm in St. Petersburg, Florida. Alonzo Coleman is outside of Houston, Texas. And Mike is in Port St. Lucie, Florida, just north of Miami and West Palm Beach and all that crazy South Florida area. So let us know where you're from in the chat box. And Alonzo, what you got for us?
Well, guys, you know how we love to have everyone here. We love to have everyone come and answer their questions, especially having Chris back. So the three guys are here. We're here to answer all your questions. So, yeah, don't be shy. We've got plenty of resources, plenty of information, plenty of experience about how to get you to your cloud architectural role quicker, faster than anything else out there. So please step right up, answer your questions. We don't have a lot of opportunities to do these things, but we're here and we want to get you where you need to go as quickly as possible. What about you, Mike?
Welcome, everyone. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about different types of digital transformation or business transformation, because that's really what we do as architects. We evaluate businesses, we evaluate their pain points, and then we think about how do we make them better? Chris is going to ask me about some examples that I'll give you from my healthcare world, because I spent a lot of time in healthcare, and the banking world, because I spent a lot of time in banking. And then we'll talk about some of the new technologies today and some of the things we can think about with regards to digital transformation if we know the industry. And that's one of those kind of things that we can talk about. Who knows? Maybe we decide to delve into an industry and we ask one of my industry experts who's on this panel about a certain industry. We can even come up with theories, but we'll take it as that comes. But the point is, we'll talk about examples of digital transformation from my life, ones that I've worked with, and how that was then, and the new transformations that are now, because digital transformation is an evolving process. Business isn't stagnant. You do something today, and then 6 months later, there's a new problem that you got to solve. And 6 months later, there's a new problem that you've got to solve. And really, to be an architect, it might take you 6 months or a year to actually create the design by all the information, because everything is about information. The better your inputs, the better your transformation. The worst example of digital transformation I'll give you is what the US government did to healthcare. Those of us that were in healthcare, we used to write these scribbly paper notes. They were really ugly. One time a pharmacy called me, lots of times the pharmacy would call me and say, Mike, on that prescription you wrote, did you mean this drug or this drug? We're taking bets. I'm like, thank you for calling me and not taking bets and killing my patient. But those were the kind of things that actually happened. And the US government looked at it and said, oh my God, medical errors are the 5th leading cause of death because everybody's got these ugly paper records and Dr. 1 doesn't know what Dr. 2 is talking about or doing. So they said, mandate, all of you are going to have money to buy electronic health records. And if you don't use that, we're going to take away your Medicare reimbursement. So I was consulting in those days, and I went from hospital to hospital, and they'd ask me, what's the best tech, Mike? And I'd say, there is no best tech. Please explain to me the manner that your nurses work here in your hospital, the way your doctors work here in this hospital, your patient admission process here in this hospital. And I was able to work with them and come up with solutions that improve their business, improve patient safety, patient outcomes, increased their revenue, and drove down their costs. By comparison, the techies of the world that weren't driven by architects, that were driven by tech, bought the best tech. And believe me, there were some clear technical choices and winners over others if you just looked at the tech. And then businesses said, we're going to lose our Medicare reimbursement. We can't survive without it, or we're going to get free money from the government to adopt this technology. Poof! Medical errors went from the 5th leading cause of death at 98,000 per year to 250,000 medical errors per year, and it became the 3rd leading cause of death prior to COVID. You can see that tech drove transformation. It killed people. But good digital transformation helps businesses. It helps people. It changes lives, and it changes the way we live. And here's what happened. I was able to work with healthcare organizations. Why? Because I know business. That, and I have practiced medicine. And at one point, I was a nurse too. So I know what people did. So we were able to use that business acumen, that knowledge of the industry to drive transformation versus what happened when the government mandated, which is it killed people. And we continue to watch people die again and again and again. And these electronic health records are not making it any better. Next time you go to your doctor, see if they even look at you, or are they just typing in a computer now, because the 3-minute paper note became a 12-minute electronic health record note. So kind of think of things like that. So we're going to talk about digital transformation tonight. All of you that are here, so thrilled to see you here. I'm thrilled. And of course, Robert Welch, haven't seen you in a while. And some of you guys I haven't seen in a while. Robert Welch, so thrilled you're cloud hired. Always great. AJ, Alexander,
Robert Welch is apparently busy golfing with people from Citibank.
As an architect, you go to a lot of dinners, you're doing a lot of golfing. One thing you won't be doing is coding, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Or configuring anything.
Where's that comment from Robert Welch? There we go. Just finished a round of golf with the manager.
You know what? Yeah, your job is just so awful, Bob. It's just terrible.
Yeah, Robert, I'm so happy for you. Miss you terribly. It's really funny. People that don't know the architect job think they're going to be working on Linux or Terraform or coding or configuring all day. No, you're going to be playing golf. You're going to be going to business meetings. You're going to be buying dinners, catering, presenting at conferences, flying all over the world and meeting some wonderful people. I love the architect job. It's the greatest thing, making your customers more successful. So I'll bring it back to you, Chris and Sa. I think you may want to ask me questions about different industries, or Alonzo can, one of you two.
Well, that sounds good, Mike. I think a lot about a lot of the financial institutions out there when it comes to Goldman Sachs, Barclays, JP Morgan Chase, and so forth. So I'm thinking about when it comes to the cloud and the industry and transformation, what would be integral to success when it comes to those financial institutions from a cloud perspective?
Sounds great. And you know what, Alonzo, let me give you two examples.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the retail investment option, like a stockbroker, financial advisor would do. And then after that, let's talk about trading systems, because they're two different things. I can remember I worked with a very large bank, and they wanted to create a financial advisor of the future. And here's the business problem. When you want to call your financial advisor, theoretically, if the financial advisor knows you, they can give you better advice. But the reality is, for most financial advisors to be successful, they need a lot of clients. And financial advisors are typically paid by the amount of money they have under management, and that's how the banks earn their living, by the amount of money they have under their management, and then they can lend in things and charge interest. So keep that at the back of your mind. So the way it would normally work is I'd call my stockbroker, hey, I want to buy some Cisco stock. I love Cisco stock. And he'd pick up the phone and be, Mike, yeah, hold on 1 second. And he'd be typing on his computer. Oh, yeah, Mike, I remember we spoke. And he's trying to read his notes and look like he knows me. And in the end, he has no idea what I like. He has no idea what my holdings actually are. And I feel cheated. It's like, wait a second. I'm paying you to do this to give me institutional knowledge to manage my money, but you don't know me or my money. And the bank said, this is not a way to operate a business. And the bank said, what can we do to make it better? And with this bank, they said, well, you know what? We have a really phenomenal CRM database, which tells us all about our clients, where they live. And inside of that database, they got really smart. They populated with people's likes, what people's risk tolerances was, for example. Mike likes real estate. Mike likes tech stocks because he knows about the tech companies, which ones he should buy in, for example, because he knows what he has got a vision of the tech future. Mike doesn't like to buy this. And they could pop that in the database. Mike likes these things. And then when we designed the system, which was ultimately built, I called my financial advisor, because we tested it along the way, and the financial advisor's phone would ring. It would be an IP phone, and a pop would come on their screen, and it would be all about Mike Gibbs. It would pull into their databases to find all of my holdings based upon the information in my phone call. It would bring up my likes, my dislikes, my fears. It was really incredible. I got someone on the call, and it felt like I knew them my whole life, like I was golfing with them every single week. Now, guess what? I talked to that financial advisor, and I said, you know what? I want to buy a new home in Palm Beach. The financial advisor said, you know what? Since we know your credit and we have your score, let me take you to the lending division. And they would push that whole screen and all that information to the mortgage team that was within the bank. And that mortgage team, oh, Mr. Gibbs, how are you? I hear you want to buy a house in Palm Beach. You're pre-approved to buy this. Is it less than this? If not, do you need any further information? Done. And it was so simple and it was so elegant. We knew about it. And if the financial advisor wasn't there and the client associate, which is sort of like the secretary, would be there, guess what? They could place the trade too in communication. So that was then. Now, think about the financial advisor experience. When financial advisors deal with high net worth clients, they meet them a lot. They're at the country club, they're golfing, they're going to dinner with them, they're buying them dinner just the way any sales rep would do. And then now you've got COVID, right? And even if you don't have COVID, what if you want to live where you want? People are leaving New York and they're coming to Florida every single day. Every new neighbor I get is from New York or New Jersey. There's lots of reasons, but they're coming here now. Now, how do you meet with them? Now you can integrate unified communications and high definition video and literally see your client as if you're like there in real time. So now I can get a screen pop. I can have a face-to-face conversation with someone anywhere in the world. Now I can work anywhere I want as a financial advisor. I can create a better connection to my customer. Now my customer and my financial advisors are better connected and there's more brand loyalty. People are more likely to invest with the same bank. Now, guess what? Now we've got artificial intelligence. Now I know what Mike likes, what Mike doesn't like, what Mike's fears are. I can even pull data from social media about his favorite things and the websites that he or she is going to. And now I can propose things that AI is going to recommend. AI can look at Mike's risk tolerance, for example. He could look at the beta of the stock or the volatility of the stock. Or they might see that I like stocks that only trade to a certain time's earnings in their PE multiple, like less than 30. Because I want to know that if earnings went down, the stock price isn't going to collapse. AI can help my financial advisor recommend stocks that are right for me. And if the return on investment is right, I'm going to invest more in that bank and more in that bank and more in that bank. And their earnings and profitability all go up. All this is enabled by technology. And that's just a single example of how technology can transform the financial advisor's life, the investor's rate of return, and at the same time, increase the profitability for the bank. That's a single example. Now, Alonzo, I think I said that I'd talk about trading systems too. So let's talk about trading systems. Here's what trading systems used to be. Believe me, I've been in this industry for a long time. When we first built networks for trading systems, here's what we were trying to do. Build the fastest networks possible so the traders could place the trades as fast as possible. Because if there's good news, let's say, for example, Cisco announces a brand new firewall that's going to change security. Everybody's going to go buy Cisco stock. And as they buy the stock, it's in an auction-like manner, and the stock price is going to go up. So if you can place that trade faster than your competitor, you got a discount. So what I started doing, what feels like a long time ago, was building the lowest latency, highest speed networks. And banks were willing to pay for it. Then the banks hired a bunch of PhD statisticians. And they wrote algorithms which needed to run on the most powerful, high-performance computers you can imagine. I mean, in those days, the things we did to enhance the speed of these things, because the business, we'd put 10 servers in the same rack in the same speed with high-speed RAID arrays for their storage, because a nanosecond of competitive advantage could mean millions and millions of dollars a year. So poof, we're building these low-latency systems. And now all of a sudden, we're able to code algorithms that are running on the CPU. And the algorithms would buy, sell, and trade based upon news. Just news. In fact, I work for a company where the systems made a lot of money. And here's what caused the systems to shut it down. Some planes flew into the Twin Towers and a few other terrorist things. And the systems didn't know how to buy and sell and trade accordingly. And the system lost so much money, it got shut down. But that was in those days. And then more algorithmic trading systems came up and banks made more money. And they invested in tech that could trade faster, they could get the news faster, they could see what people were doing and trade. Fast forward a few years. Now we've got machine learning. Machine learning can now observe people's social sentiments, what they're doing on social media. Why? Economics and finance isn't necessarily about hard data. It's a combination of soft data plus what people do. If everybody decides that Nike shoes are cool, Nike stock's going to go up. If everybody boycotts Nike, Nike stock's going to go down. And these things happen and change dynamically. So now we've got low latency trading systems, and now we've got artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence can now predict what's going on social sentiment-wise. Artificial intelligence can now look at the Fed raised interest rates by 25 basis points, which is going to pull this much money out of the economy, and what's that net effect going to be on which businesses, when, and how long does that affect it? And now AI can predict whether to buy a stock, sell a stock, or buy a put or a call option to hedge against inflation. And now we've got systems we can trade faster based upon what it's hearing, what's going on in the news. Now that's going to be lots of profitability for the stock, for the big banks. Now, what do you think that does for you as a retail investor that's trying to buy, sell, and hold trades on your own? Do you think you can compete with these systems? Of course not. So bigger rates of return for the people that are leveraged on the technology, much lower rates of return for everybody else. And that's just an example in banking of what's going on with driving transformation. There's so many other things. But if you don't understand the bank, and you don't understand the main business, and you don't understand economics, and you don't understand psychology, and you don't understand finance rates, and you don't understand bonds, and you don't understand the weighted average cost of capital that people borrow money at and loan money at, you can't drive transformation because you don't understand what variables you're manipulating. You're just thinking of tech. If you're thinking Linux like an engineer, and we love engineers, they're the greatest things in the world. They bring our designs to life. But if they're focused on Linux and they're focused on the GPU's power, they can't be focused on what's going on in the business. And that's the purpose of the cloud architect. And that's why we get cloud architects hired every day, and why everybody else can't, why we have to retrain everybody else's students, because they're teaching engineering, they're teaching configuring, they're teaching coding. And you see now why an architect can't do this. Why Robert's playing golf and he's talking about taking another client's seat shooting. He lives in Texas. He wouldn't be doing that in New Jersey. And, you know, when I became an architect, I had to learn how to buy the right scotch and how to determine what food and what wine went with my meals. And why, if you join as a cloud architect with a company like Deloitte, they'll spend 3 months teaching you social graces and which shoes need to be polished and what kind of belt goes with what kind of shirt, because it's all about that. So I gave you a couple examples in finance. Maybe we'll do some healthcare examples, and then maybe we'll get to some future examples.
Yeah, that sounds great. So you're saying like you need intuition, you need strategy, you need the ability to ascertain what position and what variables, and that requires research, that requires conversation, discussion, drilling down with your client, and what I call that pleasant interrogation, and asking questions about questions because of the questions you asked last week and so forth. So yeah, there's just so much to tech, but besides tech, than just configuring. You have to really get intimate with with the needs and understanding the needs of your client before you even able to amass such a intuitive architecture.
Exactly, Alonzo. Architecture is just like the practice of medicine. And what I mean by that is, when I learned how to practice internal medicine, I learned the way the human body worked, the way the heart works, the lungs work, the circulatory system, the neurological system, musculoskeletal system. I know which muscles where and which bones are where, okay? And every organ system of the body. And when someone comes in, I have all the science in my head, but I still don't know what's wrong with them until they walk in the room and I talk to them for the most part. And I say, what brings you in today? And they tell me. And I ask questions based upon the information they give me. I ask another question and another question and another question. Now, at some point in the practice of medicine, I say, can I examine you? And I evaluate their systems. Maybe I order an x-ray for empirical information or objective information. What's the heart look like or sound like? What do their lungs sound like? What's going on? From there, I can make a diagnosis, but I can't make that diagnosis if I don't get the right information, ask the right questions. If I don't know how the body works, I can't make that diagnosis. Then I make a diagnosis and I make a treatment plan called the prescription. Or if they're in the hospital, I write a treatment plan. Now, doctors don't work in the hospital and carry out the treatment plan as a rule. They write the orders and a nurse carries it out. Now, a surgeon does their own surgery, for example, but that's a position where they're basically just all hands-on. They're not building as many plans per se as a medical physician, like a cardiologist that would build a medical plan based on things that are going there. So exactly, it's the same kind of thing. Got to have information about the business, lots of business acumen, and medicine is medical acumen, same thing. And then it's the knowledge of every tool that you have to work with you. In medicine, you have tools like x-rays and antibiotics and beta blockers and calcium channel blockers. It's applying the right tool, the right drug, the right technology to the right problem. That's the beauty of architecture. And that's why it's a cross between an art and a science. It's not like engineering, which is all science. This is half art, 3/4 art.
I like what you did. I like what you just said. Something that just triggered something with me. You just said, actually, I don't even know if you said it at this point. Maybe it's just in my head, but you just said x-rays, I think.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you just said x-rays. But as a doctor, you don't know anything about the x-rays. You just send them for x-rays.
Yeah.
And then you read the x-rays.
Right.
There's a whole department of people that do the x-rays.
Yeah, I've never...
The doctor doesn't do the x-rays. Like
No.
I've read thousands of x-rays in my life, but I wouldn't know how to actually do the procedure. Why would I? Well, there's somebody else that does that.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I was learning how to do x-rays, all that time where I could have learned how to practice medicine and make my patients survive would be wasted learning somebody else's job, which I'd never do in the first place.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And x-ray techs get paid good money.
Yes, absolutely. I have tons of respect for them.
Get paid good money. So anyway, so I love this. I love this conversation.
Yeah.
So there's there's a component of this whole driving business performance and business transformation and all that when I know that we tend to always talk about it as a way to drive revenue, increase the earnings per share for the shareholders, that type of thing. But that's, if you could talk a little bit about, that's not every single thing that a cloud architect or even just in any role. Obviously, at the end of the line is the revenue, but there's so many things in front of you before the revenue that
Mm-hmm.
are probably going to be addressed by these business solutions that are being developed. Can you talk? Can you kind of peel that onion back a little bit to talk about? Okay, don't just look at the dollar, but what ties into the dollar. You hinted at it with the retail app for your investor. Being able to pull up your information as a customer at a snap of a finger. That's more customer service oriented solution. It does tie into revenue, but the primary is customer service. What are some other examples of driving performance?
Sure, absolutely. So, Chris, let me ask you a couple of questions. I know you've got a lot of experience about the hotel industry.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
say we're dealing with a hotel. Is it important to keep it full?
Of course.
Are you trying to maximize the revenue per room?
Yep.
Are there periods of time when people pop in and people pop out?
Yes.
Are there certain types of people that might be drawn to certain type of properties?
Definitely.
And if a customer's happier, are they more likely to return to the same property?
Yes.
And do foodies typically go to a certain kind of property as well if it's got certain types of restaurants there? I don't know. I'm asking you, you're a hotel executive.
At this time, they're building entire brands around the concept of the food experience for hotels.
Okay, so now we're in a world, and I'm going to do what I would do in any architectural situation. I'd ask questions. Now, normally, I would take somebody that used to be a general manager of a hotel like Chris with 10 years experience that's really rock solid and spend hours with them. I had 60 seconds. And I would look at it and I would say, now, if I was in a hotel now, I would generate a hypothesis. And then I'd go back to my team and I would say, Chris, here's what I'm thinking. If we had better information about our customers, we'd be able to target market to them better, would we be more, if I could reach a certain message of a certain kind of person that likes a certain kind of food and we had a hotel with a certain number of restaurants, would they be more likely to stay?
Yeah.
And Chris would say yes. And then I would say, Chris, if you had a system that could automatically charge exactly the perfect price that would be the highest price people were willing to pay, but still fill the hotel based upon information going on in the news, such as sporting events or conferences in the area or economic downturns, would that be something useful to you?
I'm going to give you an answer that you probably didn't expect.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
It would be if it worked. And the only reason I know this is because they've tried it.
Okay.
And it drives managers up the wall.
But if it worked, would that be useful?
If it worked.
Okay. Because the technology's changed and things that people tried in the past may now work in the future.
I'm going off of feedback from this weekend.
Okay.
It's driving people up the wall.
It's driving people up the wall.
Because it's trying to charge $750 a night on a Sunday night. It's like in the hotel industry, Sunday night's the worst night.
Right. So the systems they're using aren't trained properly. And bear with me, if you could find out a way to connect to customers where they're at, in a medium that they're most likely to follow by gathering intel on them, to tell them about a sale, to tell them about a promotion, would that be more likely to drag them in? I don't know the hotel industry.
Yes. Your only snafu so far is artificial intelligence.
artificial intelligence is not working with it yet. I'm just trying to figure out what our options are that we have to play with.
Yeah.
And if there was a way to dynamically catch people at, say, an airport before they even had a reservation because they were lost,
Yes.
like, would that be helpful? Okay.
Yes.
Now, do people like self-service when they're booking things, or they like to go to somebody that can help, or somebody or something that can help them?
Now the trend seems to be going back to the somebody to help me, but for a while it went to self-service.
Okay. So that I would wonder is if we could collect information from social media and website traffic. For example, when you go to a website, you get tracked. Every time you go say something on your phone, you may notice your information is tracked. For people that have, say, Amazon Alexa at their house, and I turn all those things off, anything that comes with Alexa, it's listening to you. And it's collecting further information about you, which can also be tracked. As can every website you view, every LinkedIn post you view, every Facebook, every Instagram post, for example. So we could potentially collect information about people, and we could potentially push messages to them on their system. At the same time, if airports had signage that changed dynamically, and you had vacant rooms, if you could push information to frequent travel sites and at the lowest price, maybe that could also drive traffic to you. Now, how else can we reach people? We can reach people through targeted advertising based upon people's likes and dislikes. For example, we may find foodies, like I like Greek food, for example, and Ethiopian food. Why Greek and Ethiopian? I have no idea. I'm Greek. I've got a close friend that's Ethiopian. There's lots of ties between Ethiopia and Greece, so they're the two foods that I eat. I would love when I came into a new city to find out where the Ethiopian restaurant is and where the Greek restaurant is. So if we could do something like that and connect to people, could we then find people that are potentially in certain types of restaurants that are also in other cities that are associated with other clients and collect their information and people's internet searches? And if there was a system that actually worked, that it could actually look at hotel room inventory and accurately predict, because it was trained on the right information, I'm pretty sure that'd be pretty helpful too, even if it doesn't work right now.
Yes.
So if it was me, I'd start looking into data collection and whether I'd collect that from clickstream data on social media providers who have great information, people like Adobe who sell analytical data that's out there. I'd probably use that information. And I'd probably use that information to see what's going on. I might also use machine learning if possible, if we could get somebody to figure it out and do it intelligently, to look at all the conference trends that are going on inside of a geography, look at all the sporting event trends, looking at all the concerts and see if there's a way to predict pricing based upon that with less human intervention. Because if we could do that, it would save man hours, people hours, whatever type of hours you want. I'd start looking for things like that. And again, I don't know this industry whatsoever. I would then be looking at certain types of travel sites to see if there's something local where you could push things that are local. And then I'd be collecting information on people's sites. For example, Alonzo goes and does 10 Instagram searches of Jamaica. His wife then goes and does another Google search on hotels in Jamaica. I'd be pushing Jamaican hotels things and sell directly to Alonzo's phone, his wife's phone. I'd be finding his kids, and I'd be sending messages to the kids of, here's where this fun thing that his kid loves, convincing Alonzo's kids to go to Alonzo to convince him to go stay in this hotel in Jamaica. Now, to make that work, I'd now spend the next 6 months talking to hotel executives, learning about their business. I'd then go out there and start talking to hotel workers, general managers, for example, regional managers, front desk workers, maids, because all of it works together. Maintenance people in a hotel is the engineers that make sure the systems run. Now I might know something about the hotel industry. I might, even if it's $1 billion architecture, hire an ex-hotel executive to be on my team to work with me. And companies do that kind of stuff all the time. I've worked in special industry verticals. From there, I'd be saying, okay, now I've got these great ideas. Like my idea is to use machine learning in some way to predict room prices. But I also know that I wouldn't know how to do that. But I'd go find me 15 of the world's greatest artificial intelligence architects to figure out how to design it, who would then bring me a whole bunch of artificial intelligence engineers that could actually build it to see if it was done. And if it could be done, I'd put it in my solution. If it couldn't be done, you know what I'd be doing? I'd be telling my customer, this is in the future. I know we'll be able to do this in the future. We can't do it now. So let's design our systems now to aggregate and collect this information so when the systems are ready in the future, we can give you a better pricing model. And I'd be baking that in.
I'm loving this.
I'd then be asking them how valuable their customers' data is.
Yeah.
And what happens in a data breach. And what that does to drive brand loyalty versus not. And I'd be aggregating, you know, what's the cost of a breach? Marriott hotels, I wonder how many people they have in their database. Probably a lot. And if that data is breached, what's the cost to them? It's typically about $150 to $200 per person if it's breached. And I'd be quantifying the risk that they have. I'd be saying, okay, you've got this many people. A typical breach occurs once every this many years, but are you at greater risk or less than risk based upon your business and all your systems and the connectivities of your system? I'd then be determining what their security architecture needs to be. Now I'd start looking at all these new technologies that we have designed. And now I'd have to say, do they have the people to make this work? And if not, what kind of people are necessary to drive this kind of transformation? Now when we put this tech in, it's going to actually change the processes that are working in the business. Maybe somebody's checked in differently. Maybe they're giving coupons that are digital to a restaurant. I don't know. I don't know enough about the hotel industry, though. I've stayed in thousands of them. And working as an architect, I was traveling all the time. I'd then be working and asking travelers, what do you like? What do you dislike? What are your pain points so we could architect a solution about this?
Buddy.
Then we finally figure it out. Now, after this design, I got to go back to someone and can try, let's say Chris is the hotel executive. Now I got to go convince Chris that he needs to spend $500 million on the solution because it's going to go improve his business. So now I got to justify this. I got to convince Chris that if he invests $500 million with me and my architecture, it'll be a better return on investment than building more hotel properties, which you could rent out for the same thing. And that's when a business can only spend their money in one place. It's called opportunity cost. So now I got to go prove it to them, and I got to build a business case with something called a return on investment capital model. And after I do this, I got to show that it's going to work for them. I may have to do a proof of concept. No, there's no way the person that's got the business acumen and the leadership skills to go figure out and do all this research is going to be able to build this thing by themselves because it's going to be huge. You're going to be doing a proof of concept of $500 million thing. So now I need to go build a team of 20 or 30 people to go build out this proof of concept. Even on the cloud, it's going to be big. So now I got to go build a team. I got to go convince my company to give me these people to go do this design. What's that going to take? It's going to probably take me flying a couple executives and schmoozing the executives and getting on their calendars, building a business case showing the revenue to the company. I'm probably also going to have to evaluate what okay, let's say with Chris's giant hotel chain, they're going to buy $500 million of tech. Can I generate a press release on that? Can I create a white paper or thought leadership that's going to convince other customers to go spend money on this? And maybe I'm going to give Chris a discount because he's the hotel executive to do this. Now, of course, he does this, he loses competitive advantage because he'll be the first mover and now everybody else is going to adopt it. So he may think, no press release, Mike, we're keeping this the proprietary, I'll pay more. But that's worth it to them. And now the proof of concept, now, when I finally get these resources, now I got to go manage these resources. And believe me, the people that can actually build this stuff, they're going to be a cast of characters. Because I'm going to find the best, smartest people anywhere in the world. I don't care where they come from. I'm going to have somebody that only eats green M&Ms. I'm telling you, that's what it's going to be like when you find geniuses. Somebody that's got 5 of the shame shirt that wears one every day. Somebody else won't shower. And somebody else that wants to play video games. And somebody else that realistically wants to be there is going to be smoking pot all day long. And I got to go convince them all to get to work together and harmonize. Then they build that proof of concept. I prove it to my customer. Now I got to sell it to the customer. And that means months of no negotiation potentially. And now finally the customer says yes. I get a big fat commission check. I'm all kinds of happy. And now the company hires something called the service delivery executive. And that's the new executive that go manages the deployment. And then they get 1 to 5 program managers to help manage the deployment and keep track of everything. And then they bring in a bunch of post-sales engineers to go build this thing. Now it's built, and it needs to go to another group of engineers called sysops who maintain the thing. And then when it breaks, there's another team called support that actually goes and fixes it. And that's why so much business acumen is needed for this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are architects that work on smaller projects that aren't so big. And if an architect is working on a smaller project like this, it's going to be even harder. And the reason it's going to be even harder is instead of having the dedicated project managers to go manage people, instead of getting being able to generate a business case that you need 50 people to go help you for the next 6 months, now you got to use your emotional intelligence and schmoozing skills because you're going to have to convince people in your company to go work with you. This architecture is a team sport. So no matter what the environment you're dealing with, it's impossible without extreme business acumen skills. Because how do you design an architecture if you don't understand the business problem? All of this is to solve a business problem. Now, when I was younger and I was a network engineer, I didn't even know there was a business problem. I couldn't. I was stuck. I'd telnet in those days or use a dial-up modem to go dial up to the console port of a router. And I was focused on the router. I'd be configuring the router. I was looking at the routing tables. I was configuring quality of service and rate limiting. I was 100% focused on that router. I had to. It's my job. Whatever your job is what you have to focus on. Cardiologist focuses on the heart. If you go to them about your eyes, they're going to say, go see an ophthalmologist. I don't know eyes. I know hearts. Come to me for hearts. You go to a hairdresser, they're going to cut your hair. They're not going to be doing podiatric surgery on you. They're going to cut your hair. In tech, I hate to see this because it saddens me. We seem to have people that think they're going to get good at their job by learning everybody else's job. But it's not useful for a doctor to learn how to be a dog walker. And it's not useful for a pilot to become a gardener unless they like gardening. And it's sure not useful for an architect to learn everybody else's jobs in their fields because it's too hard to learn your own job. I promise you, it'll take you 25 years. 25 years working just as an architect, doing architecture like me, I learn every day. I learn every day.
So I heard a lot of non-technical stuff in the past 45 minutes. A lot of stuff that I'm probably, so like me, I'm a non-technical person. I'm an operations guy. I'm management. I'm business. And everything that has come out of your mouth in the past 40 minutes, I would have heard in any role that I've been in the past 15 years. Not just the hotel part that you were talking about, but even before the hotel part, everything that came out of your mouth would not have been foreign in any of the work that I did in the past 15 years from a business standpoint. So for those people that are curious about the cloud architect job and the type of skills that are necessary, Mike just talked 40 minutes about several different types of work, types of problems or types of solutions that cloud architects would deal with. He talked for 45 minutes without even talking about any tech.
Yeah, that was just a small sliver, right, Chris?
Right. I mean, that right there, if that is not indicative of how much of a business role this is, I'm not sure what is. Like,
Yeah.
40 straight minutes of talking about a tech role without even talking about tech and talking all about the business.
And you know what's funny, and this is kind of off the subject, but when we have certain people who are asking about how they're going to be able to multitask other positions while doing this, and Mike just gave a small sliver of what probably a day-to-day would be, juggling one potential project when you might have a portfolio of customers and clients you have to maintain on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little more. To get the information out of somebody, that is a skill. Most people are not going to give you the information. It's a polite interrogation to actually do this. You know, for me, it was easy. And I had this transition fairly easily because I used to practice medicine. And I was trained how to ask people questions. And here's what it's like in medicine, and it's no different in architecture. Someone comes in and they want to tell you about the hair loss on their lower leg, and they can't figure out why you're worried about the temperature of their lower leg or their blood pressure, and asking them questions about their circulation. Because when there's lack of hair on one leg in medicine, I know the reason there's lack of hair is most likely a circulatory problem. And if they've got a circulatory problem in their leg, they may have a problem with a heart or a heart attack coming soon. So
I just zoned out and I came in to let hair on a leg, and I don't know what is happening.
What I was trying to say is, when you deal in medicine, you're asking a patient about this, but they want to tell you about what they think is the problem.
Oh, yeah. Oh, information gathering. Whoo!
And when it comes to information gathering, you got to keep the person straight on, because what they think they need to know versus what you think you need to know may or may not be the same thing.
Yeah.
And I had the blessing of 7 years experience learning how to ask questions and redirect people without offending them.
Yeah.
Architect students get a lot of training there because they have to. So first you got to get the right information, which means you need to know the right information to get and how to get it out of people.
Yeah. The gentle interrogation.
So unless you come from the CIA or MI6 or medicine or management consulting, it takes a lot of training to learn that. And that's why we teach it. Now, that's just getting information. Now, how do you communicate that information? I promise you, if I talk to Chris about BGP all day, Chris would be sleeping, snoring, and his cat, Sunny, would be bouncing on his head. And the only thing that I would see would be Chris's happy cat, Sunday, who's happy that Chris was sleeping and probably sleeping on top of him. But if I'm dealing with the VPN networking, I may actually have to talk about how BGP is related to their business, which means I need to understand BGP, how it works, not how to configure it, and how it impacts their business. At the same time, when I'm trying to convince that CIO that they need to go spend $15 million on routers, which are going to be part of their cloud architecture, connecting to the cloud and connecting to their WAN, I got to talk to him about what those routers are doing for their business and that connectivity. So I got to be able to speak multiple languages. Now, I need to go speak CEO speak, who's talking to me about EBITDA, for example, and compound annual growth rate. And in my design that's going to help with that, I need to translate what that is to the super smart engineers that are going to go build this. And believe me, they speak separate languages. So translation is part of this. Now, how do you get information? I can ask Alonzo a question. I'm going to get good information pretty quickly because we got a close relationship between us. Alonzo knows all kinds of things about me. That is Chris. If Alonzo didn't know anything about me and he asked me a question, he'd get half of the information. If Alonzo and I weren't so close and I asked questions, he'd be guarded about certain things because he might be able to say, maybe I shouldn't share that. So now in the role, there's the relationship development piece, because people don't share information with people they don't like or trust.
Very true.
Which is a major part of this job, is that communication and the relationship development piece. which is again another business skill.
Yeah, and just imagine someone using direct proprietary towards you against what you need for your business. It's like, okay, are you trying to drive your perspective, your intentions, your goals of someone else's business on top of mine? How are you trying to garner information to help build that counter business or whatever? That's why coming at someone with nothing but certifications specifically minded for these CSPs it's the antithesis of what cloud architects should be and do.
And we have to be careful with certifications versus training. Now, in the old days, I loved certifications. I still like them for the ability to help somebody get an interview. It's kind of like wrapping paper on a nice gift. If you don't have the gift, the wrapping paper is meaningless, believe me. I've never been crazy enough to give my wife an empty box full of wrapping paper. It would not work out well, and I don't like the doghouse. I don't feel like living there. I like living in the house, so I don't feel like doing that. And, the problem is, like today I saw one of the AWS security architects put out a post on LinkedIn, and they were talking about the brand new reference security architecture. Here's what you should do. Now, here's the thing. Everything on it was made by AWS. It just miraculously was like a hammer looking for now. How can I use as many AWS security things as I can? But that's not reality. The reality is AWS does a lot of things really well. They do a lot of things okay. For example, cloud networking is almost catching up with 1999 cloud networking. And guess what? The security of the firewalls produced by Palo Alto, Fortinet, and Checkpoint and Cisco right now is about 1 million times more capable with its intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, and pattern matching techniques than anything offered by AWS. So in a certification, it's going to tell you to use WAF. You won't be using WAF in your real career. I can promise you that if you're dealing with anything that matters. But the certifications don't want you to know that. I saw a certification provider say, guess what? We taught people how to build a high availability web application by using CloudFront. Now, the reality is you can't build a high availability web application on just CloudFront. It's a single point of failure. That's why even Amazon themselves wouldn't just use CloudFront. They use CloudFront, Fastly, Akamai, and other content delivery networks because they can't just use one. But if you look at that reference architecture or study that thing and it's in the certification, it's there. And that's the thing. Reference architectures are for engineers, not architects. Because the architecture is customized based upon the business needs. I talk about business needs forever. And I've been talking about multi-cloud forever. And guess what? 98% of organizations are now multi-cloud. We knew it was coming. You couldn't use a single cloud when there was one cloud provider, but you can't use a single cloud because it's a single point of failure. You can't use half of the stuff that's in a certification because it's proprietary and it prevents multi-cloud. The cloud providers aren't stupid when they make their certifications. They want to teach you the stuff that locks them in. You're now trapped. You're in prison. You can't go anywhere without spending a lot of work and re-architecting your things. A good architect knows not to use DynamoDB under most circumstances, or Amazon Aurora, or ECS, or AWS WAF. They know to use industrial things that work across all clouds. Not because these are bad technologies. They're not. They're great. But how do you do multi-cloud in a world where you're using proprietary things? You can't. So there's that. So it's not that certifications are bad. They teach of a name of a service, which the reality is we can't use these names with our customers because it's proprietary marketing. And they teach how to configure the service. But as architects, we don't configure the services. So I have no problem with people getting them as long as they don't count them as their education, as long as they don't count them as their training, and they count it for what it is. Icing on the cake. It's the wrapping paper around the person. So sure, I like the certifications approach. 95% of your time learning how to be great at your career, 5% getting certified to kind of put a little polish on there. And that's all it is. It's just polish.
Let's talk about the same problem, but a different area.
Sure.
The hammer looking for a nail. So
yeah,
would it be safe to say that as an architect, You can't have a solution before you meet with somebody.
100%.
Yeah.
And you can see them. And here's why I try to avoid people that have advocate or their title. In fact, an advocate reaches out to me every day and I just say, no, it's the first thing. An advocate, you got a serverless advocate. And to them, everybody needs serverless. You got a developer advocate and everybody to them needs software development. You got a cloud advocate and everything needs to go to the cloud. What if the cloud's the wrong solution? But the cloud advocate's going to push it anyway. The serverless advocate's going to push serverless. I remember a while back, we had a couple students that said to me, I want to focus on serverless. Can you make me a serverless architect? And I said, no. And they said, but Mike, I want to buy your course. And I said, I will make you a great cloud architect. A great cloud architect will look at monoliths when it's appropriate, serverless when it's appropriate, and they will determine what's right in their customer. But if all you want is to be a serverless developer, serverless advocate, or serverless architect, I don't want to train you because you'll be of no use to anyone. You'll only be giving things to your customers that aren't going to be right for them because you're all like a hammer looking for a nail. What makes your customers successful as an architect? And that's one of the reasons I can't use terms like S3 or Amazon Aurora or DynamoDB or EC2. They're marketing terms. And if I do this, like I'll use Chris for an example. Like, Chris, I got something really exciting. I got some EC2 instances, some S3 buckets, some WAF, some Shield. Look at his face. He's got a scroll there. And the reason he does is I look like a hammer in search of a nail. Now, if I said to them, Chris, upon evaluation of your systems, we feel we can take some of those virtual machines from your data center and put 50% of those virtual machines in AWS and 50% in Azure. That 3 petabytes of data that you have sitting in your Dell EMC object storage, which is end of life, we can move that to AWS object storage. And those kind of things. So I can move it there. So it's about finding your customers' needs, listening to your customers, and being able to give them something that's going to make them more successful. You need to be a trusted advisor, not an advocate. Chris, let me go back to you. You're muted there.
You keep wanting to go back to the cert thing, but let's talk about listening to your customers and not already having a solution for them before you get to them. And it's not just as a cloud architect, but I see it everywhere all the time that people have an answer before they even talk to somebody. I go to the store and somebody's got an answer for me about what I need at the clothing store before they even talk to me.
Yeah,
that's real dangerous.
Let's not gloss over that. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. If you're selling us it's that pedal piece, Chris. It's just
I'm not even talking about selling me AWS stuff or selling me Google stuff. I'm just talking about you telling me how to solve my problem.
Yeah, but
when you haven't even talked to me.
Right. Yep. And they come at you with this cookie cutter approach. Everyone needs to understand that these cloud architectural projects, they're like fingerprints. They're going to be unique. They could be very similar based on the industry needs. You could have Glidden versus Bear when it comes to the paint industry. However, their specific culture, needs, target markets, KPIs, and so forth are going to be slightly different, thus creating a different type of architecture. So if you already have something cookie cutter and you're trying to sell this solution, it will crash and burn because it doesn't meet my KPIs, key performance indicators. It doesn't meet the needs of my stakeholders. It doesn't meet any of those directly to the point where I'm going to have to get over those specific hurdles, which could cost the company millions, if not billions. So when you tell me you have an answer to a problem I haven't even addressed yet, I'm going to be very leary of you.
It's true. I'll just use an example of hotels. So to piggyback on what Mike was kept asking me questions about my hotel solution earlier, and I can tell you right away that Marriott and Hilton, top 2 North American brands, arguably worldwide brands, some of the top ones, they're not going to have similar solutions at all. They have completely different cultures. They have completely different needs. They have completely different key performance indicators. You throw Intercontinental hotels in there, IHG, Holiday Inn, Crown Plaza, all that. They're completely different too. Their whole business model is whatever Hilton does, I'm going to do it next. So, but some people would be like, okay, whatever I did for this hotel company, I can go into the next hotel company and say, hey, I did this. I've got this for you. No, that's not going to work for me. That's not going to work. Even if we did have 99.999% of the same needs, it's the how do you approach solving those needs that is going to be different for every single customer. You could have, again, we're in the hotel business. Marriott and Hilton are in the hotel business. You would think they would have the same solutions, but no, they will not. And it's just, and the reason I bring this up is because people might be thinking, well, why does that matter before I even get the job? Well, you can show that you are aware of this on an interview by the way that you handle an interview, because guess what's going to happen on an interview? You're going to try and solve a problem without figuring out what they need solved. So anyway, I just love to hear Mike's continued thoughts on that.
Chris brought up a couple of really great points. And I get emails every day. Someone's trying to solve a problem of mine, but they've never spoken to me and they don't even know my business.
Yeah.
I one time, and then I'm actually going to bring it back to tech, went into a doctor's office because I had this hip back pain. And the doctor had walked in and they said, hey, Mike, I hear all about you from this person and this person and this person. And I said, yeah, I've got this hip back pain. And he says, you got a back problem. I said, I'm not convinced I don't have a hip problem. I said, here are my MRIs. He said, oh, you got a back problem. I'm going to give you a cortisone shot. He didn't know that I had a ligament tear in my hip. He didn't examine me and was not even interested. So you think I let that guy give me a shot? I walked out of that room in horror and said to my friend that referred me, this guy tried to diagnose me without even looking at me first. But, when you think about this, let's bring it back to tech. In your interview, as Chris was alluding to, they're going to ask you questions. And we always, at least I do, and most good people that hire architects, ask them a question where they're going to have to gather information in order to be able to answer it. 85% of the people, especially if they were engineers first, will answer it. They've got an answer to it, but they don't even know the problem. And that'll happen. On these interviews, everything we ask, I'm going to assume, you have to assume, has 2 or 3 steps deeper. We're only asking you something that seems simple, but it's not simple. You got to understand how things work. And that's one of the reasons we get so deep. When you're asked, and you will be asked, to give a presentation to get hired as a cloud architect or a solution architect, there won't be a coding test, but you will have to deliver a presentation, and usually there's going to be a bunch of them. They're going to give you incomplete information. That's right. They're going to give you incomplete information. And you either need to be able to ask the right questions to get it, otherwise your design will be bad, which you're going to have to present back to them and you won't be hired, or you're going to have to make assumptions. And if so, you're going to have to tell them you assumed. But if they have the opportunity for you to ask the questions and you didn't and just assumed, again, you won't be offered the job because you can't solve a problem that you don't understand. Same way we were talking about understanding the need for a business, but every business is unique. Hospital 1 has one set of electronic health records. Hospital 2 has a different set. Everything they do is different because the technology changes the workflows. Put the wrong one in, and you cause a problem. The more you know about an industry, the better you're able to change it. Oracle, for example, bought Cerner for $40 billion, just under $40 billion. Cerner has over 1,000 medical professionals on staff. Why did the Oracle Cloud buy Cerner? And why does Cerner have 1,000 medical professionals on staff? because they understand healthcare and they can design healthcare solutions that work. Amazon out of the blue says we're doing healthcare. How many doctors do they have? 3? 10? Do you think Amazon can do what Oracle's 1,000+ doctors and nurses can do? Of course not. And they're there.
I mean, there's a reason that Amazon bought Whole Foods.
Yep.
When now it probably isn't the best decision now, but they wanted to get into and excel in the grocery market.
Mm-hmm.
So they bought a grocery chain. So same with Oracle there. Like, it's the same concept. But we're tapping into something here that I think is important. We talk about how the cloud architect role is to design, present, and sell.
Yes.
And it's now my mission to expand on what design includes.
Yeah.
And design includes research. And design includes questions. Design includes everything that we're talking about now to be able to drive business performance, because you can't drive business performance without gathering the information. And all that information gathering and all that research and all of that is what goes into designing. And how do you research? You talk to people, you ask questions, you find out what their needs are, what their problem pain points are. And you don't just talk to one person, you talk to 2 people, you talk to 5 people, you talk to 10 people, depending on how big or what the scope of the project is. You might have to talk to stakeholders in 50 different departments and 50 different locations around the world. And, it's probably not going to be you doing all that talking. So you're going to have other people gathering information that they're providing to you. And it's a lot of interpersonal skills that are absolutely necessary to this. And then, of course, there's research that requires actual old school research, like looking things up. But a big part of it is the people.
Yeah, it's a lot like you said, building those relationships, Chris. And when you're dating, you try to find as much about that person as what they like. Or if you're trying to set up like this, like my wife and I, we had this 10-year anniversary. So trying to get the logistics, details, understanding what she likes and what she doesn't like, what she wants to eat, who she wants to be there to celebrate, what their availability is, how the theme is, what's going to be included in that theme, what type of food, what we want to include. It just goes on and on and on. It's like the more you think about it, the more detail that you need, because the overall goal of ascertaining these details is the accuracy of pleasing that target audience or pleasing that client or that prospective person in that relationship. It's a universal application of understanding and taking the time through that interrogative or clandestine interrogative process without alerting that client, so that you can understand how best to meet their needs. So if it's a surprise, clandestine. If it's upfront because you have to meet certain criteria, it's going to be the same application. So we would love to get a hold and start answering a lot of the questions that we have, and we're ready to go and do that.
Absolutely. And please feel free to ask more.
Oh, no, whoa. We got to get through the ones we already got before you start asking people for more. All right, let's see. I got to go all the way back to the beginning here. All right, there's Robert Welch saying he just finished golf with the Citigroup person.
Love that, Robert. So happy. Now you're an architect when you're doing that.
All right. So Mark asks, can Mike discuss a little about the different mindset an architect must have compared to an engineer when it comes to an organization itself?
Mark, I'm not 100% sure what you mean by this. So in a normal world, I would ask clarifying questions, but I also know you really well. So what I'd like you to do is follows. If I'm not answering your question and I'm answering a different question, please let me know. And I'll answer that question as well.
I see Mark is still in the chat box, so let's just let's give him a chance to do clarification on that.
Yeah, let's do that.
And we'll go to the next one. And I'll
feel
keep an
better
eye on
about
that
that.
clarification from Mark. Let us see here. Let's see. Okay, that's not for us, huh? Sorry. Lots of comments to get through. Here we go. Samuel says, must say I'm enjoying the session.
Good, Samuel. We're glad to have you.
Brian says, I was in a meeting with a new CTO presenting to the whole IT team. Everything Mike has said is true. Business acumen. Ask the stakeholders what drives their business. Be less techy was emphasized. This is what the CTO is emphasizing to the team.
Yeah.
Yes. And actually, while we're at it, as artificial intelligence can drive and do more of the techie things than the hands-on techie things, this business acumen becomes more important and more important and more important by the day.
All right, and Mark, don't forget, put some clarification in there. If we don't see some clarification, we'll come back to your question and let Mike answer it however Mike wants to answer it. But we've got our next question. The next question is, we'll say cloud engineer, but they meant cloud architect. So,
okay,
what might be some tangible quarterly goals for a cloud architect? Who does this position typically report to within a company?
Okay.
Well, most of us work pre-sales, and our tangible quarterly goals will be revenue targets. We have to sell a certain amount of product to our customers. They'll typically be customer satisfaction scores with how well we did our job. There might be an education component with us. For example, attend a leadership thing by the end of the quarter. There typically might be, did you write a thought leadership document or a white paper to try and drive sales? Quarterly goals maybe, did you present at a conference? Quarterly goals maybe, did you publish something in a magazine? They're typically tangible quarterly goals, but this is typically revenue. Now, who we report to is kind of everywhere. I reported to a VP in most of my architect life because most architects are director level, especially the enterprise architect ones. Some architects are also VP level, depending upon the company and what they actually do, if they're principal or distinguished architects or chief architects as well. We typically report into the sales organization, and that's why we get sales and we get commissions. But it's typically there. But every company is different. Now, if we were working in a post-sales organization, like a lot of my students work in a bank, they'll typically be, and banks are weird because everybody's a VP in a bank, but a director might actually be somebody serious in a bank. We may report to the director in a bank if we're working on there, the director of architecture, or a senior director of architecture, or the senior director of technology. Sometimes we report to the CIO or the CTO as well. Great questions.
Yeah, I like those.
But revenue goals are typically the biggest one.
From Neelafar, can we get remote jobs after your course? Belong from I guess they're located in India, from India. And what websites will we need to apply for a remote job after your course?
Let's break this down into multiple questions. Yeah. Can you get remote jobs after our course? Yes, many people have. But remote is different than remote. For example, you have to be able to travel to your customers in remote. Now, in the US, somebody wanted me to support a client in Japan, but I would have had to been up on Japanese hours, and I would have to periodically go meet with the executives in Japan. I chose not to do it because I don't like to be up in the middle of the night. I called one of my closest friends, Nagaraj, who's over there in India, and said, would you be interested in the position? And of course, he didn't want the position, but he could have taken the position, and they would have been very interested in speaking to Nagaraj over there in Bangalore. But Nagaraj is great. And any company would be lucky to have him. He happens to be in a very senior role for one of the cloud providers themselves. I'm trying to get him to work for me because I like the guy so much, and we did our CCIEs together 20-some years ago. So the answer is yes. But generally speaking, unless you're great, and you got to be great, you're going to be in a position where it's going to be harder to get an architect job remotely as it would be an engineer. Now, I've been remote as an architect now for 20 years. Since 2001, I've been remote. But what does remote really mean for an architect? Remote means when I lived in Palm Beach, Florida, one day I was in New York, another day I was in London, another day I was in San Jose, another day I was in Dubai, and another day I'd be in Brisbane, another day I'd be in Sydney. I was supposed to go to Cape Town and work with a customer there. But that's kind of the point. As an architect, we're always going to be traveling to our customer sites. Now, it's not going to be an everyday thing, especially with video conferencing, but we have that business relationship with someone. So we will be challenging there. Now, as a rule, our students don't need to apply to work anywhere. Why would they? We teach our students how to build such a brand that people like Robert Welch, if he's still on the call, would get 20 interview requests per day because of the brand building. Now, Robert took our brand building work and listened every single day. Each day, he'd send me a message of the number of people that tried to interview him, and he would pick the ones that he chose to do so. So the key is, if you're good and you're with a good organization and they're teaching you how to promote yourself, and you're building your right brand and your right LinkedIn profile, people will aggressively recruit you. Today, I had somebody that got hired, never worked in tech in their life, and they got a senior architect role with no experience. He happened to apply for a job. Somebody else just told me they went on another interview because they got it because of a LinkedIn post that I made and they commented on it and somebody liked it. So there's that. But it's not about applying for jobs. When you apply, and I'm not telling you not to apply for jobs. I would. But I'd also realize that when you apply for jobs, if you don't have experience, you're going to be auto-rejected. If you work with recruiters and the right recruiters, they're going to send you directly to the hiring manager. The hiring manager is going to interview you. The hiring manager is going to say, I'm going to hire you. Then the hiring manager is going to call HR and say, I hired this person, so you don't get auto-rejected by HR. Then they're going to tell you to fill out an application even though you're already hired, and you'll be working there. So I don't apply for jobs. I've never applied. That's not true. I applied for 5 jobs 25 years ago. I got rejected from all 5. I've never applied for a job since, and I get bombarded and recruited aggressively every day throughout my technology career because of the brand building I did. So yes, you can be hired, and it's not about which websites you're going to go to.
And Bob's over there in the chat box talking about how he's still got 10 plus a day reaching out to him. I told him he needs to be sharing those with me and Alonzo so we can spread the wealth.
Yes, please spread the wealth.
So there's a couple of questions here from Devin. I'm going to go with the last one that Devin put in, and then we'll kind of work backwards from there. So Devin shares, I interviewed for a major airline for a cybersecurity role and killed the interview, but they want an architect that know how to code using whatever those letters are. He left it up to me to do a tech interview or not. So,
Devin, it wasn't an architect job. It was an engineering job. Architects don't touch the tech. If there's any tech involved, it's an engineering job, and there. So that's the question you have to become is, do you want to be an engineer or do you want to be an architect? But you won't be allowed to touch your technology if you're a real architect. Now, there are some fake architect roles out there. In fact, I had one 20-some years ago. Somebody hired me, and when I got to the job, they asked me to do some engineering thing on the second day. And I said, but I'm an architect. And they said, we didn't really want an architect. We wanted a CCI network engineer that was so good, but we couldn't pay him engineering pay because we knew we wouldn't get anybody. So we're calling it an architect. We're paying you as an architect, but I want you to be a network engineer, Mike. I walked out the door.
From Devin, how much of a difference between the cloud architect and solutions architect?
Well, there really isn't any difference with one exception. If you're a solutions architect, you work for a company like Azure, and you recommend Azure solutions. If you're a cloud architect, you know that you can't just use a single cloud, and you recommend Nutanix plus Azure plus AWS. So the real difference is whether you recommend a single cloud, which is a single point of failure like a solutions architect, or do you recommend what's in your customer's best interest, which is a multi-cloud or a hybrid multi-cloud environment. And that's the key. So solution architects, like an AWS solution architect, only works for one company, AWS. If they're not at AWS, they're a cloud architect. A cloud architect works at a bank. A cloud architect works at a consulting firm that recommends multi-cloud solutions. And 90% of the jobs are cloud architect jobs, not solution architect jobs. Solution architect is just a cloud architect that only works on one cloud.
Mm-hmm. So I need to know subnetting as good as a CCIE to become a cloud architect.
Well, Devin, I'm going to be very clear. Subnetting is like the ABCs. It's literally like kindergarten level when it actually comes to networking. So that's not even a CCIE scale, it's a CCNA scale. Now, who does the IP networking design needs to be CCIE level, because if the IP addressing is wrong, the routing is wrong, and everything will crash and burn. So, kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that's really speaking what we're dealing with. So yeah, you need to know subnetting really, really well. And if you don't, there's nothing you can do. You can't be in security because everything's got an IP, and you can't create a route filter if you don't understand subnetting. You can't create an architecture without knowing subnetting, because what'll happen is the routing will be bad. And if your routing is bad, your network collapses. And if the network collapses, nobody can talk to anybody. So you're going to need to know subnetting very well. Very well.
So I got some clarification from Mark on his question. Let me go back up here, put the question on screen. Apparently Mark had a unexpected kitten visit his house, so he got distracted. All right, so here's Mark's question. Can Mike discuss a little about the different mindset an architect must have compared to an engineer when it comes to an organization itself?
Okay.
And he says, an engineer is usually more concerned about just getting a job done and appears to be less invested in how to improve the business, whereas as an architect is invested in the business and improving it. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So Mark, let's be a little clear. As the architect, you have to be focused on the business and whatever supports the business. I helped one hospital be more efficient by noticing that the nurses ran back and forth to an ice machine. So I told them to get another ice machine after watching what the nurses did, and they saved hours of overtime per day. It was the coolest thing ever, and it was the simplest solution. But as an architect, your whole job is improving the business performance. As an engineer, your whole job is making the technology work. So yeah, the thinking and the focus needs to be completely different. If I'm focused on the tech, I'm going to miss the business. If I'm focused on the business, I can't be as focused on the tech. And that's why this is such a leadership role. Because when it comes to a normal cloud architecture, I've got to think about security. I also have to think about identity and access management, which is not security, it's something else. I now need to think about the network. I now need to think about what are we going to do with all this data that's coming in. Can we leverage AI to remove redundancies in the business and improve the businesses? Now, how am I going to get the people communicating with each other? Is it text? Is it Slack? Is it voice? Is it video? And what underlying technologies are necessary to support that? For example, does the business have a supply chain? How do we optimize that supply chain? How do we deal with all the external business partners and vendors a business has? How does the customer access the system? So as an architect, we're so focused on this big picture, what's going on here and here and here and here and here. We can't afford to get deep in anything, no matter how hard we want. So Mark, I know you're one of the finest network engineers I've ever met. So and you're also an incredible cloud architect because you're trained to do both. But if it came down to it, and I was dealing with something, I'd say I need a network engineer like Mark to focus on the network. Now, if you wanted to work as a cloud architect that day, you could focus on a cloud architecture, but then you couldn't focus on the network because you can only focus on one thing. So our mindset as architects is purely to focus on the big picture. What are the business needs? What is the desired end state? What people, processes, and technology gets the business to that end state? That's my focus as an architect. And how do I lead the team of all the geniuses that are going to help me design this thing to make it work for the customer? Again, as the architect. As the engineer, I got to make the tech work. And I got to be focused on that tech. Am I going to configure it? Am I going to performance tune it? Do I need to code it? I mean, well, all those things that are going on under the hood, somebody's got to focus on that, and that's why we need engineers. And the engineers are very important. But you can only focus on one thing at a time. I'd love to see a general manager of a hotel try to clean the rooms, run the restaurant, and work the front desk, and be on the phone dealing with reservations all at the same time, and do it well. Now, I'm sure after COVID, they had one person try to do that.
I was about to say, you could have seen that in COVID at any hotel.
I did see it right after COVID, and here's the reason. Georgia was the first state to open after that, and my wife was tired of being cooped in the house because in Florida, we were locked in our house for 30 days. So she said, we're getting in our car and we're driving to Georgia. So we drove to Georgia, stayed in a hotel. There was one person who was managing the hotel, cleaning the rooms, making the breakfast, answering the phones. Now, when I walked in that hotel, I couldn't check in. It took an hour and a half to check in just to find somebody because she was doing 18 people's jobs. But yeah, it wasn't a good customer experience. And if the hotel continued to operate that way, they'd lose customers real fast.
So Devin added some scary clarification for his interview opportunity. So for context, the directors I interviewed with were both new, under 3 months. I interviewed them harder than they interviewed me, and the red flag was that they had no clarity on the role's duties.
Oh, yeah. That would have been a free-for-all.
This actually ties into my talking point about HR and job descriptions and recruiters. Company recruiters, not third-party recruiters, but company recruiters, like internal recruiters for a company. I guess new directors would fall into this category also. They're just going to go by the piece of paper that's in front of them. Because it sounds like they don't know what the role is. Yeah. So they're going to go by the piece of paper, aka the job description. That doesn't make any sense.
And they've never been exposed to one either, which makes it even worse.
That's scary. You dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. And to be fair, why does a company have a bunch of new directors?
Yeah.
Because a well-done run company doesn't lose their management or executive team by any stretch of the imagination. So if they're all new, that's another red flag and something to be scared about.
Yeah, you think about.
Yeah, he just shared the name with me. It's a red flag. I saw. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that company definitely has had some trouble. Anyway.
I think we know who that is, but we won't say.
Yeah. Oh no, not the one that you.
Okay.
It's not the one that stranded everybody over Christmas. Not that one.
Okay.
But, all right. So, yeah, but that's if they can't explain the reason for a requirement or clarity on the role, then that's a red flag. I'm glad you saw that red flag, Devin.
Yeah, good. Okay, I know where this is coming from. Right now, I'm seeing a tremendous number of really dangerous resumes. They have a portfolio section on them, like an artist. And you know what a hiring manager like me does when we see these things? And it's being perpetuated by two sources. Someone that never worked or graduated their architect trainee at Amazon that's talking about doing projects, and engineers. And we get resumes that look like this, and I've gotten about 500 of them in the last 2 weeks, and here's what I do to them. The second say I portfolio or a project section, they are trash. In our organization, if you're our student, you will build real projects and you'll do an internship. And in the internship, under the internship, you'll do real things like design architectures, present architectures, negotiate deals, design a cloud. Actually, we'll have you build a cloud just so you know what a cloud actually even is. And you'll have real things that real architects do. Designing solutions for banking customers, designing solutions for retail customers, designing social media organizations, working together in large architecture teams, leading architecture teams, Practice responding to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. You'll be writing thought leadership documents and things like that. You'll be doing the entire job, and you'll have all that listed on your resume. We'll provide the training on how to build the perfect resume. We'll provide the perfect training on how to provide the perfect LinkedIn profile. And we'll even provide the training on how to build the perfect brand so people come and rush to you to hire you on a daily basis. But we have to remember it has to be done under something. Architect resumes don't have a skills section. They're executive resumes. And if you've got a skills section like an engineer, again, it's going to be thrown away. So we've got a lot of expertise in teaching you how to build the right resume and giving you all the right things to list on your resume that employers beg us for. And that's why we have cloud providers coming to our course and telling our students why they love our program. That's why we've got VPs from HR organizations asking to hire our students because they love what we do, because that's exactly what we're doing.
From Rashmi, can we get transition as a cloud architect and cloud engineer and cloud architect after completing your course? Your course applies to only American citizens or those with H-1B who are also able to obtain a remote job.
So Mr. Singh, Mr. Lion, I think it's the coolest name in the world, the name that means lion, because I love big cats. And the lion is the most regal of all the cats. We've helped many people go from cloud engineers to becoming a cloud architects. We are global. We're not just in the US. We've got people getting hired constantly in India, people getting hired in Africa. We've got people getting hired in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, Europe, England, the Middle East, South America. We've got people getting hired everywhere. We're not a US company. We're a global company. And we've got people getting hired every single day. All over the world, in local jobs, remote jobs, and everywhere in between. We'd be honored to get you to your goals as a working cloud architect.
From Desislava, after the research and design phase, is the cloud architect responsible for interfacing with implementation teams, and are design changes required often based on the implementation team's feedback?
Okay, no, we do not interact with implementation teams. We design a solution. After the solution is sold, there's a person that's appointed. It's typically a service delivery executive, and they actually work in the post-sales division of a company. And they are responsible with managing the customer relationships after the architect sells it and managing the implementation teams. We design one thing. I design it for Bank of America. Poof. Mike, I need you to go to Barclays Bank. Poof. Mike, when you're done that, I need you to go to talk about the Scottish Health Service. Poof. When you're done that, go to Cape Town and deal with another company. That's our job. We're not interfacing. We're so divorced from the tech other than the design, and we're divorced from the people that actually build it too. It's another thing. Now, are there design changes based upon the implementation team's feedback? Not if it's a real architect, because a real architect is going to be involved in building a team of 10 to 50 people necessary to design the architecture, and it's going to be designed right in the first place. So no, design changes shouldn't be there. And if there are design changes, after the customer already signed off on an architecture and signed off on a scope of work, the company that actually sold them is going to take it upon themselves to go fix it. And typically it can't be, the company's going to have to eat that financially. They can't charge the customer.
Yep.
But yes, I've seen people disaster do it. And you know, the people that I've seen that really tried to messed up these architectures that never worked, are the person that tried to be the techie architect. They thought they were going to learn the DevOps engineer's job. They thought they were going to learn the sysops or the maintenance person's job. They thought they were going to learn the developer's job. They thought they were going to learn the cloud engineer's job. And instead of building these elite leadership skills and knowing how to leverage and how to delegate and how to optimize, they thought they knew it themselves. And unless somebody becomes a vampire and can live a few thousand years, they don't have enough time to learn 20, 30, 40 people's jobs and be good at it. It takes a lifetime to master one job. So I have seen it, but it's never with a good architect. It's always with somebody that says, I'm an architect, I'm still working on the tech, I'm a techie. And you can't know everybody's job. So realize that, learn how to be a great leader, and your systems are going to work flawlessly.
All right, so I'll start this one off with a little clarity for you guys because I did the legwork. Mike, I have a request. Can you quickly Google Product Alliance Institute? Does your course plus this course help become an architect? No, that is a product management training program. So no, that will not help you become a architect. Mike and Alonzo, if you guys would like to talk about
If you
cloud
take
architect
our
and
course,
product management.
if you take our course and not the Product Management Institute course, you'll become a cloud architect. If you take the Product Alliance Architect course or Product Alliance course, which is a project management course, and us, you're not going to be either because you're going to be trying to learn two different people's careers and you'll be terrible at both. You've got to function in your job. A project manager as a task manager, did you do this? 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 An architect is a finesse worker. That's a systems designer. That's an executive. Two completely different careers. If you tried to be a marathon runner and a 100-meter sprinter, you'd be terrible at each. A 100-meter sprinter like Usain Bolt is a big, tall, muscly guy. He's typically about 6'3", 100 kilos of pure muscle, and is super strong. A marathon runner is typically a 50-kilo person that's typically 5'7", super skinny with no muscle on their body because they need to be light for that. Got to pick one. If you take our course, you'll become an incredible cloud architect. You should get an incredible cloud architect job and you'll love it.
Couldn't agree more. Someone who's done both program product management and cloud architecture positions, they're not the same. So, and don't try to create this amalgamation, this large, multi-talented person because they don't exist. Each one of those roles and skill set will cancel each other out. You'll end up being this hodgepodge that is not definable by any hiring manager, and they will throw your resume in the trash. From RCE GOAT, why is everyone flooding LinkedIn that they were doing AWS projects?
I can tell you right now, approximately 2.5 years ago, we told everybody they could get 1,000,001 certifications and no one would hire them. And we produced our product. We've retrained people from every major organization. Daniel Bosu spent $35,000 on a garbage boot camp, and we retrained him and got him hired. We've retrained people from all these architect programs. And here's what happened. After we started telling people certifications won't get you hired, all the certification people started, after their people got certified, they came to us. And then they went, oh my God, we got to start doing cloud projects. Cloud projects are going to get us hired. And the same people that created hundreds of thousands of certified people that are not hireable are now telling everybody to do cloud projects. And then they found somebody that worked for AWS as a junior architect and associate architect, which is a trainee position. This person never graduated the trainee position and decided to build out a YouTube channel. And this person's advising people how to get a career who never had a career themselves and never even worked as an architect. This person, she couldn't even make it through her training. So she's out there doing this, the certification people, and now everybody's putting projects on their resume. And I promise you, none of them are going to get hired. We see it every day, and it's honestly, it's like, seriously, if you failed at getting people hired, learn what's necessary to do it, and don't train people in careers you've never had. But if you put AWS projects on your resume, I promise you, your resume is going to be thrown in the trash. So my recommendation is either ask a VP of architecture that works for a big company what they're looking for. I've asked thousands of hiring managers. I've asked thousands of leaders, thousands of recruiters what they want in a perfect employee, and they've told me. I can tell you one thing. I consistently ask leaders, would you like to see projects like in a portfolio? And they laugh. They laugh when somebody's got Git in there. So I'm not trying to come across negative, and I really caution if I feel bad if it does. I just want all of you to get hired, and I want you to all have a really great career. And you're not going to get it by doing projects. And here's why. Let's say I taught you how to set up a bird routing daemon, which on 2 Linux machines, and let you configure BGP off of the bird routing daemon on Linux. Guess what you're going to learn? You're going to learn Linux. In order to install the bird routing daemon, you're going to probably have to do an SU- super user. You're going to run some Linux commands. And then you'll figure out how to edit some files in these Linux systems, and now you'll know BGP. Well, you'll configure BGP. Guess what you won't know? How to tune BGP, how to optimize BGP, how to load share on BGP, how to traffic engineer on BGP, how to architect BGP, which means you still won't be prepared for the job. All that's really going to happen at that point is you've got a bunch of irrelevant things on your resume, which are going to make you look even less like an architect, because architects don't do those things. So it's about matching the right things for the career that you actually desired. And yes, everybody's doing architecture projects. And yes, these are the same people that are trying to tell you that to be an architect, learn all these skills that aren't architecture, like coding and Linux and Python and Terraform. They're great skills for a cloud engineer, but they're not architects. But then again, the people teaching the architect program, these architect programs have never worked as an architect. And RCE Goat, I'm going to tell you the two people that have AWS training courses out there have reached out to us and asked us to teach them how to become architects. And they've got courses out there on Udemy. So that's why.
So as I understand it, you guys' course has us do an internship, but I work 70 hours a week and run my life off a mobile hotspot due to travel. Would it be possible to do that portion of the course? The course is the internship.
Mm-hmm.
If you are doing the program, you are doing the internship.
Let me tell you about Ivan Tamba. Ivan Tamba was a 24-year-old. He used to drive 90 minutes back and forth to school each day. He'd come from Africa, found a family in the church, and he lived with the church. He drove 90 minutes each day. He was a full-time student. After he would go to school for 6 hours each day, plus his 3 hours of driving, he worked as a waiter for 4 to 6 hours every single night. He did that, which was more than 70 hours per week, took our course, and was hired by AWS within 6 months. When I was at Cisco Systems, I decided I was going to do an MBA for the second time because I love business acumen. And I was working in New York City, and I used to drive to Delaware. And when I worked at Cisco, I worked about 60 hours a week, and then basically drove 200 miles each time and did an MBA. So the answer is yes, you can absolutely do it. And here's the thing. We don't rush you. You're in our course until you're hired. And if it takes you a year to get through, so what? And if it takes you a little longer than that, that's fine too. As long as you're hired in the end, we just want you to do great. You have access to the Slack community forever. You have access to our content forever. And you've got a year in our live classes, and you could extend that should that be done for a small fee.
All right. And so just to let everybody know that we will be wrapping up here by 8 o'clock. So we will be wrapping up in 12 minutes. We'll be getting to as many of the questions as we possibly can. Just to follow up on this question, over 80% of our students are working full-time plus. So 80% of our students are working full-time or more. So that is a little helpful information for you there. All right, so we got a three-parter question from Pernell. So it appears that the cloud architects will do more than just recommend how to move the technology from the data center to the cloud.
Yeah.
Let me get all the parts out. Cloud architects recommend solutions that cover anything from business processes, new technologies, or CRM that may transform the business and our software applications and our ice machines, our luggage carts. Part 3. So if I understand correctly, cloud architects really serve as trusted business advisors to CIOs and executives on helping them deal with business challenges successfully. I would argue that you limited yourself to advisors to CIOs and executives. You're advisors to more than just CIOs.
Everyone,
but
every leader.
Those people that you're advising to, if you're not advising to the CIO or to the executive, those people that you're advising to are advising to them. So you're never more than a couple of steps away from that CIO or that executive. So what is the working relationship between a CIO and a cloud architect within the same organization or company?
If the cloud architect is working post-sales, they'll be talking every day in many cases, because the CIO is responsible for the IT strategy of the organization, and the cloud architect is going to be dealing with most of the technology that's part of the strategy. So I'm going to say the CIO is going to be the management, The CIO is going to be a 95% to 100% business person that knows a little about technology. The cloud architect is going to be a 50 to 80% business person with 20 to 50% technology. But they're going to work together almost every day if they're in the same company like that. Constantly.
All right. So is cloud architect responsible for documentation? I see many jobs talking about that.
Yeah.
Documentation is 30% of our job.
If you see that in a job description, trust that.
Yeah, that is accurate.
And it's going to be responsible for RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, design proposals, architectural documents. Oh yeah, lots of documenting and lots of writing. And we have to know how to write to the executives, to the management, and to the techies alike. And we do all of it as architects.
And guess what? Writing to those executives is going to be a completely different language than writing to those techies.
Oh, yeah.
Sure is.
Oh, yeah. Most of the time, it is said to put your achievement on your resume when you put in your project an achievement on your resume.
Okay, achievement on your resume, 100%. Projects, no. Now, if you have a job, for example, when I worked at Cisco System, I might talk about an architecture that I did with the Hospital Corporation of America and list that as a project, but that's work experience and that's okay. A project section on your resume, absolutely not. That's the worst thing you can do. Achievements on your resume, 100%. Achieve Systems Architect of the Quarter. Achieve Most Valuable Team Player. Receive the Invincible Determination of Award for never quitting. Oh, yeah. Definitely achievements go on your resume. Exceeded sales quota by 113%. That should always be on your resume. Achievements, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Any wins? Yes. Any somewhere you can show yourself as awesome or a leader? Yes.
Yeah, showing that performance and pushing it's providing that action that you've done and how you've benefited that organization. So that's always going to be great. It's like stats for a sports player. What did you do? How did you help them win championships, games, seasonal movement? That's your performance, and yeah, it's always going to be a benefit.
All right, everybody. So it is time that we start to wrap up. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this episode. Hopefully, everyone else found it enlightening, learning about the importance that the cloud architect plays with business transformation and driving business performance. I will leave it with Alonzo and Mike to close out with some closing thoughts. We'll start with Alonzo, and then we'll finish up with Mike.
Okay, awesome. Well, as always, like Chris said, it's just wonderful having everyone here, being able to talk about what drives business performance, what you need to learn, being able to understand what's included, what the details that are needed to be successful. So keep in mind that, like you said, we didn't discuss anything about tech, but we spent a detailed understanding, and we still had more to talk about what you need to do to build relationships. How do you need to understand your client? What you need to do to be successful, being able to realize that projects and adding them on resumes is not effective as it is you understanding the client and being able to provide those performance metrics on your resumes. So there's so much involved. So please continue to grow. If you want to learn more, please access our website, provide to get any more access and understanding about our development courses. And we'd love to have you. So on to Mike. Thank you so much for joining us.
And, thank you for joining us tonight. Look, I've been an architect for over 25 years. This is my life's work, and I absolutely love it. I love it because it gave me a chance to truly improve my customers' business performance. And to me, I love that. For the last 20 years, in addition to being an architect, I've architected people's careers. I've architected people's careers the same way I architect customers' technology solutions. We ask clients what they want in the perfect cloud architect. We ask people who they're hiring in the perfect cloud architect. And we've created a program where we train people to be exactly what the hiring managers are screaming for. I get calls every day that say, Mike, I need architects. I don't want an engineer. I want an architect. I don't want a techie. People keep coming to us with 10 AWS certifications, but they know zero about architecture. They're coming to us with a list of coding and all the configuring. Can you find me someone, I beg you, that can design a solution, present the solution, sell it back to the customer, communicate, has the business acumen, the leadership, the soft skills, and executive presence. Chris and I get on the phone with people that are trying to hire people, because when our students, and he's shaking his head yes, because he's been with me. When one of my students turns down a job, they say, who else can we hire from your company? We love your people. I love getting people hired. I love changing people's lives. I grew up with almost nothing. I worked 2 full-time jobs to pay for college. When I got my first architect job, wow, that was kind of exciting. I was able to pay off my house with my first commission check, my first bonus. My mortgage was done. I paid off my car with the next commission check. And from there, I was able to do anything I wanted. And I love that. My students tell me that if they've gotten a job and they can buy a brand new house and 2 brand new Mercedes, which 90% of my students say after graduation from us, which is hired, I feel good because I architected a new change in their life. And it's not me. It's me. It's Alonzo working with our students. It's Chris making sure our students successful. It's the PhD business professors, Dr. Cooper Johnson and Dr. Jamie Long, that are over there at University of Tennessee, at Martin. It's the executives that come in from big technology companies. It's the enterprise architects that also help come in and teach. It's the application architects that we have that are coming in and teaching our students the way applications are designed. It's the network architects like Mark that come in and help teach our program, and Imran who come and teach our program. It's the big data architects like Praveen. And we do this to make sure that our architects are the best in the world. Join us on Thursday to learn how to get your first cloud architect job, and come to the webinar. We will tell you that everything that you need to know to be an architect, and how we will get you to become an architect, and how you will get hired, and how you can have the most amazing architecture career. In our training program, we cover everything from training you, helping you build your resume, helping you build your brand. I even have students negotiating an additional $20,000, and today's student negotiated an extra $40,000 through our negotiation training, which is part of our cloud architecture development, because we want to do everything we can to change your life. So join us Thursday on this free webinar. Don't miss the opportunity to get our cloud architect career development program with the completely free, right now, 2-for-1 special interview training program. It'll change your life for a cost that's less than 3 days average pay for the average cloud architect. Our average cloud architect is earning $200,000 right now. That's as much as a physician that takes on $300,000 to $500,000 of student loans, plus 11 years of school, or a lawyer that takes on $500,000 of loans and earns $150,000 or less. Our students are earning more for tuition that's less than 3 days pay for the average graduate. And you get the free, you get the completely free interview training, and even 10% off right now. So don't lose this opportunity. It may never come around again.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We hope that you have a great night. We will see you on Thursday, either on the webinar or in class, whichever one you choose. Or maybe you choose both. Maybe you attend the webinar and then join us in class. Either one. We will see you all then. Thank you, everybody.
It's a pleasure, everybody.
Everybody.
Next time.